Hey, welcome back to Disciple Making Parent. It's Casey and I. We get to just jump into chapter 17 this week. Last week we finished up part 2 of talking about teaching, talking, and tattooing. And so we really focused in on memorizing scripture. And what I love about this next chapter is we're going to be talking about family devotions today.
Right.
And so I'm excited to jump in, see how that can really begin in our own homes. And what that looks like. So thank you for joining us, whether it's in the morning, afternoon, or evening. I know we kind of talk about that.
Yeah.
And we're excited that you're with us on this. So and don't forget, if you haven't had a chance to get the book, it's Disciple Making Parent by Chap Bettis. That's what we've been walking through. We're in chapter 17. And what we do here is we begin to discuss what that chapter has been talking about. So we take that scripture and then we kind of discuss how do we practically do these things. And so What's the scripture that it was using for us today, Casey?
So the passage that this chapter is based on is Deuteronomy 6:7. I think we've been using Deuteronomy 6 for several videos now.
Absolutely.
But they're taking them in just little parts and breaking it down. So Deuteronomy 6:7 says this: "You shall teach them diligently to your children," talking about the commandments, "and you shall talk of them when you sit in your house." So that's kind of where we're stopping in six. It's actually 6:7, kind of A. Some people use that because it's talking. It says, talk of them when you sit in your house. And so as we talk about family devotions, most of the time I've known families that do that in their house.
Absolutely.
I mean, you can go for a trip or to the park or something, but a lot of times family devotions are thought about in the home at night, maybe at dinner, maybe after dinner.
I'd say the top two would be probably dinner right before bed.
Sure.
Like, I know that it's at least how when I was growing up, that's whenever we would have more of those discussions.
Right.
But I'm sure there's other options as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, if you're a homeschooling family or if you're doing school from home, maybe you want to start off the family devotion in the morning. That might start your day off in a positive and encouraging way. You can listen to Caleb because they're positive and encouraging as well.
That's right, man.
But some of the things
plug.
that I want to talk about today are, whether you've ever done a family devotion or not, what are some ways to actually do family devotions? Maybe even whether you have young kids, elementary, or even students. Are there just some ways that all families could start doing just a simple family devotion?
Man, I think that's a really important question, mainly because a lot of our lives are dealt with, or just we face just a lot of teaching that goes on and on. And we don't want the family devotion just to become another teaching time for us.
Right.
Because the family devotions, what that really looks like is teaching and relationship put together. And so we are still going through what Scripture's saying, but there's a relational and application aspect to this that is so important that I feel like sometimes we miss. And so I just want to put just a little emphasis on that because I think that is a place where we can grow in.
Yeah.
I know for me, and the reason I'm saying that is because that's somewhere I can grow in. And so how do we really begin to do this? What does that look like? Well, I think we can easily start with what we talked about last week. Taking a verse or a couple of verses and memorizing it as a family. So remember, Casey challenged us last week to take this verse or a couple of verses and say, hey, by Christmas, we want to have these verses memorized.
Right.
And we want to do that not just within our local family, but with extended family as well.
Yeah.
And so if you want to talk about family devotions, building on last week, to this week, that's a great way to start, is saying, okay, what verse or passage have you already picked out? And then begin to walk through that. So what resources can you use for family devotions? Because it doesn't always have to be a book.
Right.
You can actually go through the scripture itself. And so, a couple of the books that really, I guess, resources we like to use is ESV Study Bible, right?
Yeah.
I know you have a couple in your office. I have that's actually what our students use. And that commentary really helps us understand more of the passage itself.
Right.
But also, there are some really good devotionals out there as well. And so that's at least a starting point of like, okay, we looked at memorizing verses last week. So just to play off of that, why don't we begin to have that devotion with our family on a weekly, daily basis, starting with that one specific passage?
Yeah, just to understand what we're memorizing in a little bit deeper fashion.
Right.
I think that'd be great. So another one that I want to talk about is just picking out a psalm. Yeah. Sometimes choosing Psalm 100. There's many. How many are there? Psalms 100 and 19, 20. I know it's up.
There's
Maybe
a
it's
lot.
50.
Yeah, it's higher because Psalm
150.
119 is the longest
Oh,
psalm. So
man.
like there's it's
100.
way up there.
Let's say there's 150 something Psalms.
That's right.
I think it's something like that. So, but Psalm 100 is one I thought of. I don't know why I kind of stopped at 119, but it's just a short one, Psalm 100. Or there's other short ones. Actually, Psalm 113, 114, 115. I know all of those are really short.
Right.
And so choosing one of those and then talking about it and just saying, hey, family member, what do you think this means when we read this?
Yeah.
What do you think the person maybe was saying during the time they wrote it? What did that mean? Because then we can turn to our ESV study Bible and
That's
use
right.
that. But part of it is sometimes just sitting down and what do you think of when you read this psalm, or even the book of Proverbs, or really
right.
simple things that, and again, if I'm trying to bring the point of no matter where our children are at, I think a young child can hear a proverb and probably give a little feedback, preschooler maybe. Elementary
Absolutely.
definitely could. And then as we get maybe more mature in our faith as student ministry, if they've been growing in their faith, that they should be able to really apply that and hear that in a different way and talk about it.
Yeah, they can almost break it down a little bit, because as your brain develops and as you're growing up, you have a little bit more life experience in some of this.
Right.
And so you can begin to have more practical examples of that. And that's what I love about really that middle and high school area is like you're developing so much and you're beginning to form your life around what Scripture says.
Sure.
And why? Because we've probably messed up, and that's a big part of it.
Yeah.
I know like some of the biggest changes that's happened in my life has happened through what God has said in Scripture based on a mess up that I've done, because I've recognized my own sin or where I've fallen short and how I want to grow and get better in that. And
Right.
and so when it comes to Psalms, another part of that is like you have confidence. Like, yeah, we just like family went through an entire chapter. Like, think about that. That's not easy.
Right.
Going through an entire chapter through the family devotion. And so you're saying, hey, we've gone through Psalm, 110, or we've gone through all these. And so that can be an encouraging and some push too to say, let's continue in this and get some traction in this. And here's the deal, like just starting somewhere is so important. And I know as I've talked to students, and specifically ones that have done it, maybe you've gone back from it and now doing it again, like they are yearning, like craving this.
Yeah.
And I say that sometimes the things that they crave the most, they push back the most and they start off with. Like,
Yes.
let's do this, please. It's so important. But they're like, they're too cool for it. So they kind of want to push back and say, no, I don't want to do that today. Or I'm tired. Or some of those other excuses.
Yeah.
I want to encourage you as a parent, persevere through this, because it will be fruitful for you and your family.
Right.
And so it's going to be hard, but you're not alone in this. This is something that we're called to do as parents, to disciple our kids. And let's just get through this first season and show the importance and how good it is, not only in your own life as a parent, but also for them to begin to take and to apply and to grow in. So I know that that's a barrier to start. And
Oh, yeah. Just know, to me, I think the thing, whenever there's pushback, no, that's probably a fruitful thing.
that's right.
If you're getting pushback on it, keep pressing in, especially with something like this, because it always will bring a fruitful reward,
Yeah.
even if you can't see it in the moment.
That's right.
That's what I think about, especially with my kids, most of which are in elementary school. I see when we start family devotion, it's like they start kind of falling on the floor, sprawling around. There's something flying all of a sudden in the sky, in the air of our living room, and it's like anything to be distracted. But yet,
Yeah.
if we're watching TV, man, we're just like zombies, like glued into that thing, and there's nothing flying. We don't see anything. We don't hear anything. We are so, and so I think that's the difference, is when we can get really, we can waste our time and use our time doing a lot of different things, but when it comes to family devotion, sometimes I think it's really against the grain, but it's what we need most as families.
Right. And a point that you just I was thinking through as you were talking about that is so much of our life is individual. So much of it is just, let's do this by ourselves, or even when we're watching TV, that can be individual too.
Yeah,
a lot of times it
sure.
is I'm zoned in on this content that I'm engaging with, And it may be around other people, but it's really not necessarily in community with other people. And so when it comes to family devotion, that word family is really important. And doing that together, because I think we need more of that. I think we need to be together more, specifically in that family unit.
Yeah.
The more time that we're able to actually get together, and we've talked about this in some of our previous video, having those heart connections. The stronger heart connection that you have, really the more opportunity you have to have these conversations and to see some more fruit come from that.
Yeah.
And so doing it as an entire family unit is really important. So I just wanted to kind of say that too, because having it one-on-one with these students, like that's good over some time as well. But man, it's great if you can have the entire family come together and do this.
So another thing, if you're just a family sitting out there and you're hearing us and you think, we have never done this, and I don't know where to begin, and starting in Psalm or Proverb or whatever sounds like I'm not sure. Maybe you look at the Bible and you're just not sure how to interpret that, no matter if you have that ESV study Bible or not. I thought, as you were talking, an idea came to me. Because you were saying how sometimes we're so individualistic, I guess, a little bit. Even at church, we can be that way. So maybe the simplest thing you could actually do is just, what did y'all talk about at church today? Yeah.
Yes.
Or what did you hear? If you're worshiping from home, or if you worship here on campus, what did you hear? What are something that stood out to you during the worship or during the message time or at any point, part of while we were at church today or while we worshiped at home today or whatever, that what is something that stood out? And I guarantee the first time there's going to be crickets. Just like you were talking.
Guaranteed. Yeah,
guaranteed.
Absolutely.
But if you can start the habit, family devotion, start the habit of checking in after church to say, what did we hear today?
Yeah.
And start hearing, you'll hear more and more feedback, I think, from,
I think that's a phenomenal starting point. That's such a good point because, if you've been engaging with us on Sunday mornings, whether it's in person or virtual, we've been going through Isaiah. And sometimes it's more than one chapter. And so when it comes to family devotions, you have so much material based on that because we walk through, verse by verse by verse, and we begin to expound upon it. And so if you're nervous about starting, the service is recorded. Continue to listen to that and to grow in that. But then you can begin to have those conversations with students or with your children. And then the other part of it is missional communities. And we'll just have a plug here too. Missional communities have been one of the most fruitful things for my family since we've been here in Texas and at Wedgwood, and growing together from knowing more about what the Scripture says, but each other and loving on each other and caring for one another. And so having both of those together throughout the, just on a Sunday morning, throughout the rest of the week, having the family devotions, splitting that up is phenomenal. And so that's just one option. And so even if you're, Old Testament's tough, but even if you're a little shy about that, students, if you have a middle schooler or a high schooler, we've been going through the book of Colossians, and we've been covering about 8-9 different verses to get, at least in a week. And so family devotion can look like one verse a day, at least to start off with, or a couple of verses a day. And so we want to encourage you and open that door. Parents, we want you to be involved. And so if you don't have anything to do, come see us.
Yeah. Well, I think you said a verse a day. One of the things that I've thought about this whole time we've been discussing this together is I know families are busy. And so that's why we end up maybe watching TV is because so-and-so is gone here or whatever. We're just always busy. So maybe, again, a starting point is not once a day. Might just be once a week.
Yeah.
Just don't, if we're starting together in this, just don't put too much before us, but just start. Just try it. But maybe there's a lot of families out there that are saying, well, we've been doing this for a while. Well, I encourage you, how could you take a step farther, take a step up? Or maybe you're not ready for that, but maybe you are, and you've just been swamped with busyness or news of our world and our nation, and you just haven't been challenged by anyone to take that next step of challenging your family.
It's been really overwhelming.
For sure. We say that every week, because every
absolutely.
week it's overwhelming. So that's why it makes me think, a verse a day or a devotion a day, literally might be too much, and that's okay. I just want to say
Absolutely.
that.
No, and I think that you're spot on with that because it can be. Because all our schedules on every single day. So for us, my family,
Right.
Wednesday, like I'm gone from the time that I wake up until really it's 8:30, 9 o'clock. And so that is a full day, I know, for my family. And I'm
Right.
sure it's similar for your family as well.
Right.
Because we have so much going on these times. But,
Right.
you know, it also brings it to the point of, like, it's okay not to do it every single day. But I want to go back to what you said earlier about having that scripture a part of something we're already doing.
Yeah.
It really makes sense to continue in that one scripture. You know why? Because we're not having to go through, we have a different
Something new.
scripture on Wednesday,
Right.
on Sunday,
Right.
on our family devotion, on discipleship. Like being
Yeah.
able to say, hey,
Just
we're
one.
gonna go through what we've been doing on Sunday. So
Right.
hey, you've already been exposed to it, students or children. And so we're just going to dive a little deeper into it. Or
Yeah.
maybe we're just going to talk about it.
Right.
Because the idea of diving deeper can be overwhelming of like, well, I don't know much deeper. Well, that's okay. What about the practical part of this? Or even just saying, hey, this is what Scripture says. Like, and this has been challenging me, and I've been seeing this. Or where are you guys at in this?
Yeah.
So-
Simple. Simple is okay.
Absolutely. And I think it's a great place to start, having that simple start.
And you mentioned missional communities, Bible study groups, wherever you're in. If you process during that time as parents, adults, grandparents, using some of that from the week, you know, to continue something you've already learned. And that way, it may require you to look further into it, but it may not. You may be able to just use what you discussed, what you learned, what you heard. Because again, I'm just trying to think of parents, and I know that we're all maybe overwhelmed ourselves. The time we're living in seems overwhelming, and so starting something new might feel tough, but I think we've said this whole video is that it's so rewarding to do family devotions.
Absolutely.
Your children are going to grow. You're going to grow as a parent, as an adult. Grandparents, if you're out there hearing us, to say, when do you get the opportunity to just share? You can send an encouraging card with a devotion, you know, a prayer. I mean, there are so many ways that we can encourage those around us during this time, and I think that that's exactly what we need.
Yeah, and let me just say this, because I know students would never say this to their parents, is that I can't tell you the amount of students that I've had just here at Wedgwood that have come to me and said, you know, my family devotion is something I look forward to every single day, or something I've missed during some of these times where it hasn't happened. And so while you may never hear it from your own child or your own student, that really does have a value.
Yeah.
And I want you to know, like, I want to pass this on to you of saying, like, there's testimony after testimony of the little things that you're doing in their life, they're holding on to. And what this is it's impressing in them, and it's something that's sticking with them.
Yeah.
And so I want to encourage you by saying, keep doing it. You're making such a major impact in your student's life. And I just want to say that I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
And I'm thankful that we're able, as really children's ministry and student ministry, able to partner with you to try and encourage and to continue in this, because we're all in this together.
Right. Yeah, and so, I mean, honestly, we just want to encourage you in any simple way or advanced way that you might need it. And so, you know, we've included links in the past, and we may include one today of just some other ways that you can stay connected to devotions. Again, we've mentioned what we're studying on Sunday morning in the book of Isaiah, Colossians. The children's ministry puts out several things throughout the week of what we're studying, whether you're on campus or not. And so, you know, just doing a family devotion is the best, most encouraging thing that we can say for you to do, whether it's once a week, once a day, twice a day. You make those decisions, but the fruit will come when you do it. And so that's been today's video. We want to look forward to next Friday's video.
That's right.
Next Friday, we're going to dive into chapter 18, talking about raising your children to take the land.
Ooh, man, that's so exciting.
What does that mean?
I'm getting excited. Raising your children to take the land. I don't know, but it just sounds like Lewis and Clark. We're going to go and we need to figure this out. I know
Right.
they were exploring, but might not be the best example. But yeah, just raising your children to take the land. It
Right.
sounds like taking authority or taking responsibility.
So we say this every week. If
Yeah.
you don't have the book, we'd love for you to grab it, to read that chapter ahead of time. Even if you're grabbing it for the first time this week, go ahead and jump to chapter 18 and then catch up later maybe from reading. Find out, what does that mean to teach your students and to challenge them to take the land. So that's what we're going to be talking about next Friday. Again, encourage someone else to watch this video. Send somebody a devotion. Sit down with your family today or in the next few days and have a family devotion. And encourage those ones around you. We look forward to seeing you next week.
Awesome. See ya.